All right, can you see the live count today?
Yeah, I can see. Six
All right.
seconds and ongoing.
Welcome to the Transcend Yourself Podcast. This is the very first episode. I am joined here by Cole Abrams, the official co-host. My name is Joshua Jansen, and let's get this started. Okay, so
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
cool, man. We decided to start a podcast. We always have great conversations. We talk about everything. I have a big interest in psychology, philosophy. I do a lot of introspective work like that. Cole is studying actuarial science, really good at maths. Also interested in. So you're not good at maths? Is that what you're saying?
Just embracing humility. Yeah.
Okay, but we talk about a wide range of topics. This podcast, we'll try and cover everything that we find interesting. Lately, we've been looking a lot into philosophy and the God debates and things like that. But we're not afraid to tackle any topic that comes our way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Cole, tell us what tell the people what you're interested in.
What I'm interested in.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, obviously, I have quite some interest in my course of study. Going into my third year now. There'd be no point in gaining expertise in something that you have absolutely no interest in. So that would
Yeah.
be
Of course.
statistics and actuarial science. It incorporates economics, accounting, heavily based on maths as well, and obviously statistics and business. So I like it because it's quite a wide-ranging, especially quite heavily maths dependent. So
So you
I
would
like
say
that aspect
maths
of it.
maths is your home ground, your
Yeah, but unfortunately this year we're sort of leaving maths behind because
all
we
right,
don't
yeah.
major in maths. We only did it for the first 2 years. I'll going into third year this year, so
Mm.
that's quite disappointing. But
All right.
yeah, that's my degree. Although as you've just mentioned, we're quite interested in psychology, although that's more your interest than mine, but we
Mm.
both share interest in philosophy and
But I
really
mean,
everything pertaining to the God debate.
well, we both very curious. So anything that
Yeah, certainly.
pretty much any intellectual topic we'll be more than happy to indulge in.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Okay, so for me, philosophy, psychology all stems from a desire to live a good life and to improve myself. That's the
Okay.
basis behind it. And for
And
me,
to understand
it's
the world better,
and
is
to
that
understand the world better. So it's from a
okay?
deep curiosity of the self and people and how to live correctly. And that's why
Okay.
religions fascinated me so much, because it's like these these structured forms of beliefs are conducting or controlling how so many people are living. And that's why for me these topics are so important, and they kind of get brushed away as not important. They just people just having conversations for with no value. But what people actually need to have these conversations, because it's shaping how masses of people are thinking.
Yeah.
And it kind of just gets neglected. And that's why I focus on these topics. And
Oh
for
yeah, for
you
sure.
with your maths and your actuarial science, where do you see that, uh, like, what's your drive behind that?
Um, well, there are many factors that I considered in essentially the motivation behind why I chose this course of study. Obviously, I had some interest in it, some passion, but I guess there are two other factors. I can clump demand for the profession
Mm,
and the salary into one factor, because obviously
yeah,
that should be a consideration
of course, yeah.
in any course of study that you choose. There's no point in choosing a course of study that's purely based on your interest, because you might not find a job after graduating. So there's that, and I guess it opens up the possibility to change the world. I know a lot of young people around the world are very aspirational and ambitious individuals.
That's what I'm looking for. So how do you see that field, pursuing that field? How could you impact many lives?
Well, yeah, it's a good question. So for those who don't know, actuarial science is essentially a field of study of monitoring, calculating, and measuring risk pertaining to the individuals and businesses. So then you might ask, well, what is risk, right? And
Yeah.
surprisingly, we haven't even dealt with that in the first 2 years yet. I presume we're going to delve into it either this year or in honors in fourth year. But there are many different competing definitions of risk. One would be the set of all positive and negative consequences resulting from uncertainty, right?
Mm.
And the world is filled with uncertainty. So it's certainly interesting to study it, both from a somewhat psychological perspective,
Mm-hmm.
because there are individuals who are risk averse and others that are risk seeking. And so we can somewhat measure how this influences the behavior.
Mm-hmm.
But there are many different fields in which actual science is present in. It's mainly insurance, like life insurance, health insurance, and general insurance. But it also spills into banking, pensions, investments, and various other industries as well. So clearly, it's important specifically to South Africa, to our economy.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I could make some long-lasting difference here.
Yeah, we are both from South Africa. Just to be
Yeah.
clear on that. I'm sure you can tell from our accents, but South Africans
Well,
always
maybe not so much.
South Africans can always pick up when like this. We have this very unique accent.
Yeah. No, we do, yeah.
But yeah, the actuarial science I'm sure covers a wide range of
Oh, yes, it's very
needs.
wide-ranging, but the point that I was going to make is that I think artificial intelligence and machine learning is still somewhat in its infancy. And although I obviously don't have much experience with the actual science profession thus far, the impression that I get is that it's somewhat archaic.
Right.
And so it would be really cool to coalesce
Revolutionizing.
artificial intelligence and machine learning with actual science.
How would you do that? Like come up with programs to calculate risk, or I've no idea what I'm talking about here.
Well, certainly you could use it in the formation of your algorithms. Excuse me, essentially use it as a tool in collecting data, in analyzing data, in performing various functions. Again, not really sure. This year in our statistics module, we have a sub-module called, I believe it's called machine learning. So it'll be interesting to delve into. But yeah, certainly, as you can see with OpenAI and ChatGPT, as well as various other AIs, it's clearly influencing our world quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm using AI almost all day, every day now since I've started
Yeah,
using it.
yeah.
It's actually helped so much with the YouTube channel as well, making all the videos. Like I don't know what I would do without it. I don't know how I survived without it.
So you specifically use it for the formulation of your scripts, right?
Yeah, mostly for that. Yeah.
And anything outside of that?
Well, I usually will come up with a script idea and then I use it to make it more precise, to get the key information. AI I'm using for I've kind of replaced it as my Google. Usually I would go on Google and how does this work? Or tell me about this. And then you'd have to sift through so many websites. You have to go on
Yeah.
this website, then you kind of have to come up with a conclusion. Where now, like with ChatGPT 4 specifically, it will give you all the information concisely with links to where the information came from. And ChatGPT 3.5, it will just it's got so much it's got such a big database that it can just give you summaries of anything you want to you want information on. I can ask it, give me a summary of the Egyptian pyramids, and it will give a whole. It will know everything on it, and you don't need to
Yeah.
now go and sift through all these websites on all the history of Egypt. It's really remarkable what we have in our hands right now.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
No, it really is. I believe ChatGPT has, at the very least, billions of parameters that they use in their model. I mean,
Billions of
billions
parameters.
of parameters. Quite
Okay, so
incomprehensible.
for this podcast, we're still not really sure what exactly we want to be touching on. We both have the interest in philosophy. Um, I like bringing psychological perspectives. You you love the maths. We we both have interest in physics, but not enough so to delve into it as deeply. Um, what aspirations do you have for the topics on this podcast?
For the topics of discussion,
Yeah,
well, I don't think anything comes to mind immediately apart from just accelerating the rate at which we learn various topics. But
yeah,
turning to philosophy,
mm,
psychology somewhat because there's an overlap between the diversity of religion, so various ones.
yeah,
That's interesting to look at. And then obviously you have this psychological aspect that pertains to that as well, right?
yes.
The reason why people create gods, if they do, we won't delve into that right
This
now, but
sounds quite like simple to us, but to a person hearing this, they'll be like, "Wow, these guys really want to go into deep topics," and I think that's how you would sum us up. Really, we want to tackle the really we want to go into we want
the
to get
hard-hitting
dirty,
questions.
the hard hitting ones, the ones people generally avoid. Those are the ones we go. Those are the ones that attract us. The ones that no one
Yeah,
wants to talk about. We're like, okay, yeah, let's talk about it, and
yeah.
that's what I think will make this podcast great because we'll touch on these topics that are so important but just get neglected.
Oh yeah, certainly. I think our general philosophy would be lifelong learners. I don't think you would
Yeah,
agree with that.
100%. Yeah,
Mm. So yeah, it agrees with Neil deGrasse Tyson's statement. That was a bit of a tongue twister there. His statement, in which he encourages people to continue learning post high school and
yeah,
post university as well.
mm,
Yeah, I think he realizes the importance, especially with the American population, of educating Americans beyond their formal education.
it's actually quite funny. My learning really started after high school.
Mm,
In high school, I didn't have the passion because I was doing things, being forced into topics that I really didn't want to do.
yeah,
So then there was no drive. My curiosity somewhat died, and I feel like that's what the education system might be doing to a lot of people. And then
yeah,
once I got out of school, when I moved to the UK, and then I now had the opportunity to pick what I wanted to learn. And then you start learning every day, and your knowledge just grows tremendously.
yeah.
And I think we just are lucky to have that curiosity, but most
Mm,
people, I guess, just don't.
yeah. Perhaps there's some intrinsic quality of curiosity
Mm.
within the individuals, but perhaps it's also dependent on how it's taught, how they interact with various materials.
What do you
Because
think
they
the
yeah.
Wait, so you finish your thing? I'll ask after.
No, I was just thinking that perhaps in general, um, I would say, and perhaps this is a hasty generalization, but the vast majority of people find engaging in textbooks somewhat boring
Yeah,
compared to very
fair,
interactive
fair enough. Fair
platforms.
enough.
Yeah. So,
Can't fault anyone on that.
yeah.
Uh, so we both have this natural curiosity. What do you think is the underlying d- driver behind it?
Hmm.
For
That's a good
you,
question.
for people in general? For me, I feel like to the top of my head, it's somewhat like a fear of missing out. Like you don't want to not know on a topic that seems so interesting to other people, and you kind of don't want to miss out on that part of life. There's an element of that, and then there's also an element of wanting to be better, because you can't be better unless you absorb more information.
Okay.
It's like the thing that Jordan Peterson says, like, if you're unhappy with your life, you don't need to go out and talk to people and ask questions. You can you can just be in your own bubble. But most of you are unhappy with something, so you need to go out and seek information. So maybe there's that aspect to it. It's a deep desire to be better.
Yeah.
So
Okay, that's interesting.
what do you think it is?
Um, I don't know if there's a definitive answer to the question. I also don't think I would characterize my curiosity as a desire to be a better person.
Mm,
It's more compulsive, I think. So I was going to ask you a question on your first point that you made.
yeah.
The essentially the inability to comment on various interesting topics as a result of being ignorant. And I want to ask you, do you think that's perhaps an insecurity or something else?
You're referring to when I couldn't comment on actuarial science. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, say, for example.
I don't know if it's
But
insecurity. I think it's just what you call it, admitting that I lack a lot of knowledge in this field, and what's the word? Yielding. Like I just said, put up my hand and say I don't know. And I
yeah.
think I feel like that's a very important statement that
Oh, yes.
a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
people don't they don't like doing it. They don't like saying I don't know. And that for
Mm,
me is the sign of someone who genuinely wants to be better, or someone who's genuinely curious and wants to learn. When people when you ask them a question and they will always try and come up with an answer, even though you know they don't know anything on the topic, or they know they don't know anything on the topic, it's all right sometimes just to say I don't know.
yeah.
And then this it's genuine curiosity for me to be like that.
Yeah. Now it is very interesting. I think it is a statement that should be more valued
Mm,
and more important should be placed on it. I can tell you a little anecdote quickly.
yeah.
So currently, for all those listening, we are both in Cape Town at the moment, in separate locations, but in the same city. But I've certainly had experiences where I've been in Johannesburg. I've asked someone for direction somewhere, and despite not knowing the
They're
place that I'm
still
looking
telling.
for, they will still give me incorrect directions to this place that I'm looking for. That completely,
You can't just say, "Nah, sorry, mate, I can't help you." It's
yeah,
no, no, go
I
down
I
there,
don't
take a
understand it.
left at that robot, and then yeah, you'll see it. You'll see it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
funny, man.
And in that case, right, I would prefer the person saying they don't know rather than leading me
Yeah,
astray.
that's helping you, isn't it?
Yes.
Do you know how many times you'll like, in my experience, where I'll ask a rhetorical question, like, "I wonder what it's like." Random. Let's say there's a famous philosophical question: "What's it like to be a bat?" And I would say, "I wonder what it's like to be a bat."
Mm.
Rhetorically, like I'm not asking the person next to me specifically, but then they will come up with an answer. Like I know we both don't know the answer, but you're
Yeah.
coming up with an answer
Yeah.
confidently.
Well,
I guess maybe it's a guess, but my point is people try and assert that, try and claim to have knowledge on something they know they don't have. Or maybe
yeah.
I'm being too harsh. Maybe I'm being too harsh.
I think perhaps you are, because there's a fine line between visualizing or envisioning hypothetical scenarios and and
Okay, maybe
claiming
my
that you,
example was a bit off, but
yeah,
yeah.
because say take one of Einstein's thought experiments, right? I
Mm.
believe this was, if you guys are interested in looking at this nice visual, there are videos on YouTube. I believe it's by National Geographic. It's called Genius. It's the Genius series. There's Pablo Picasso, there's Einstein, and a few others.
Quickly, you can share your screen, by the way. I'm not sure if I have
Um,
to give you permission, but if you do want to share your screen, you can do that.
okay, no, I don't want to share it now, but
Okay.
cool. But yeah, it's called the Genius series. Einstein has features in one of them. And so, as you probably know, there are various thought experiments that Einstein has had throughout his career. And I believe this was in relation to his theory on special relativity. I know everyone must have heard the equation equals mc squared before in their life.
I'm
And
sure.
so in his essay titled On the Electrodynamics of Moving Bodies, if I remember correctly, essentially the main idea is that time is relative, right? And in arriving at this conclusion, he had this thought experiment where he imagined himself on a train traveling at like an extremely fast speed beyond anything at the time. Any train was capable of moving at the time. And then two lightning bolts striking the ground while he was moving towards one and away from the other. Now, I could go further on in this description of his thought experiment, but that's an example of how someone technically doesn't know the answer to, but they could place themselves in this hypothetical scenario, envision it,
Yeah.
and try to arrive at a conclusion.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Perhaps my example was a bit off, but
yeah.
I like your explanation there.
Mm. So tell us something about the UK and the differences in the educational system between South Africa and over there. Was
Oh,
there
the
vast
UK.
difference?
Well, I didn't really get into a school when I was there. I was doing mostly distance learning, but my
Mm.
mom was working there as a teacher, obviously.
Yeah,
And they kind of, so the GCSEs are like the main exams that you write at. It's kind of like your school leaving. Are you asking specifically like the structure of the education system, or?
yeah, anything really. The structure of the curriculums, the exams, whatever really.
So I know when they in like the junior schools they have like, let's say, exams that the whole country writes, and depending on how well you do in those exams dictates what type of school you go into next. So
Okay.
so my mom described it as schools that have students that give a crap, and other schools where the kids don't give a crap. So the if you do badly in those exams, you either at that good school or you're at a bad school.
All right.
And my mom was teaching at one of those bad schools, so the kids
Okay.
didn't really care about their studies because they know they're not going to go to A levels, which is after the GCSEs. Um, it's a very interesting system they have there. But you write your GCSEs, which are the most important, and then you can choose to do A levels after that. But there's a big culture in the UK that I noticed where many people are very, very content with not studying further, and they finish school and they go get a
Beyond
job.
high school.
Yeah,
Okay.
they finish their GCSEs and they're very okay with going and getting a job as a
Hmm.
delivery man or packing boxes in Waitrose or becoming a waiter because the pay is so good for those low level jobs that you can
Okay.
still you can live a content life, or
Right.
the parents have a lot of money or things like that.
Yeah.
The culture is very different in the UK, whereas I don't know. There's a big problem in the education system where they can't get the kids to want to learn, and they kind of
Yeah.
have this give up mindset. Um, But in terms of the tests, I've written the tests, the AS level exams, and I've spoken to you about it. How the types of questions are completely different. They're more high level and they're more practical. Whereas in South
Yeah.
Africa, it's like you learn the textbook, you learn the examples, and you're doing it in the test. You're just repeating what you've learned in the textbook. Whereas
Yeah.
you can kind of learn the whole physics textbook or the whole whatever textbook, the whole geography textbook, and you go into the exam, they ask you these questions, and you'll have no idea what to do. So you actually need to have practice with these practical questions. That's why doing past papers for these UK tests are so important, because it's testing your critical thinking much more instead of
Okay.
just regurgitating the examples or what you've learned. So that's quite interesting, the difference in that.
Okay. And are A levels required to enter university or some higher
Yeah.
tertiary
So
education?
so when you finish those GCSEs, if you
Mm.
want to go to university, you need to go and do A levels.
Okay.
I'm pretty
And I've
sure.
heard of
Yeah.
O levels before. Is that also in the UK or?
O levels is equivalent to the GCSEs.
Oh, okay.
It's on the same level. I think some
Right.
other countries do O levels. Depends what exam boards you're with.
Okay.
Okay, so let's talk about the benefits we're gonna get from this podcast.
Okay.
The the thing that enticed me the most to do this is being able to articulate the ideas that we've learned. So
Yeah.
we're learning all the time, you and me, right? We're going into different topics all the time, but we don't always have opportunity to use what we've learned. So
Yeah.
now for us to pick a topic and then we go learn, and now we can speak. We It actually allows us to build on what we've learned. We will improve our articulation skills and things like that.
Yeah.
What else do you see us getting from this podcast?
I think the prioritization of certain tasks and time management. I
Mm,
think this is an overlooked aspect of this podcast, but you're entering into your first year of studies in
mm,
psychology, I believe, right? This year. I'm going into my third year, and despite the difference between third year and first year, university experience is quite different from high school.
mm.
And from what I've learned over the first 2 years, there needs to be emphasis placed on your academics over everything else. And because we are such curious individuals, we tend to prioritize learning in general at
Yeah.
the expense of uh, my studies
Yes.
personally. So I think this year my approach will be slightly different. I'll prioritize my studying, especially it's the last year of my degree, so I need to wrap
Mm,
things up. And yeah, this podcast will be a platform where we can devote a certain amount of time to the articulation of our thoughts and concepts that we've recently learned, and
yeah.
yeah, bounce some ideas off each other.
For me, what's great about this is we can have a more dedicated time. So we'll often have conversations. We'll talk about certain topics, but we'll kind of do it over like a week, in
Yeah,
sporadically. But for what I can envision with this is we will pick a topic. We'll pick certain things we're interested in at the moment, and we can condense it and actually probably get more done, because like I've told you before, we probably think and bounce off each other from conversation, like actually bouncing off ideas in the moment, and then it will improve our ability to think and articulate, um, rather than what we tend to do now, which is just learn, think, but we don't use the information. But then what happens when you start speaking with someone, you you kind of see the pitfalls in your ways of thinking. You get a different perspective in the moment, and it kind of solidifies what you've already learned. You know that old
Yeah.
saying, if you want to learn something for a test, just learn and go teach it to someone, because
Yes.
it stays in your head when you can teach it to someone. So I can see that being a great skill that will just happen, will develop naturally from doing this podcast, which I'm
Oh
really
yeah,
excited about.
certainly. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was Richard Feynman's philosophy.
Which
Well-known
was?
physicist. It was teaching a concept that you've
Mm,
just learned to someone
yeah.
to improve your understanding of it. I
Mm.
think it's really invaluable.
There's How many times have you, like, say, read something in a book, but then you kind of got asked on this topic, and now you kind of have to go back in your head, like, what is it that all that I learned, and now you can't read it from the book. You have to now create it in your own words, and that for
Yeah.
me is the real process of learning. When
Yes.
you can use the information that you've consumed, not just have it in you, but to be able to bring it across to someone else. That's the real indication of
Yes.
learning.
I think you've touched on another point there, in which this podcast will essentially keep us on our toes, right?
Yeah,
So
100%.
you can certainly envision a scenario in which we learn philosophy somewhat loosely over, say, I don't know, a month, a week, 2 weeks, whatever it is really. Then not engaging in the material, whatever it may be, through simply reading articles or formally reading books or watching YouTube videos, whatever it is, but not engaging in the certain topic for a long extended period of time. And then when having conversations with someone, suddenly the topic pops up and you have to think back
Yes,
quite a long
exactly.
time to when you
Yeah,
initially had it.
it's
So yeah,
it's amazing how we seem to store. We have information stored. Like, I did research on religions and stuff 2 3 years ago, right?
right.
And if you brought up a topic from, let's say, you brought up Exodus, I still have that knowledge from all those years ago, but it's the act of speaking that kind of ignites all that knowledge again. Do you know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes, because it's essentially active recollection of the material,
Yeah, yeah, right.
which is a key component to the learning process, certainly.
Mm.
And
That's
I know, yeah,
well, the real beauty of this podcast is if we can pick pick these topics, and then it will entice us to learn so that we can now come speak on it,
yes,
and we won't have notes on the things we've learned. it's
because
it's
that
just
defeats the
us,
purpose.
it's just you and me trying to bring it across to each other,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then we can bounce off. It's gonna be great.
yeah. What's really cool is that we will be able to pinpoint holes in each other's
Yeah.
comprehension of various topics and
Hmm.
ideas. And we've certainly already have some experience in this already by sending voice notes to each other.
Mm.
So I'll send something to you, and then you'll ask such an elementary question that I've
And it stumps
overlooked.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is
Mm.
a perfect platform to teach it to someone and to really iron out those holes.
I
It's not the
remember
greatest analogy, but yeah.
I remember there was a time when I was doing a lot of research on Daoism, and you asked me just like a few very simple questions, like you said, and I couldn't really answer it properly because it was kind of a difficult topic. And then it made me realize I don't remember or understand as much as I think I do.
Yeah.
It's like when you watch a math teacher do the examples on the board, and you watch him do it, and you're like, wow, I completely understand the maths all make sense. He gives you the exact same question. Okay, you do it now. And you just look at it like, okay, where do I start? It's a it's a it's a very common thing where people think they have the comprehension, the understanding, until you're left alone to build it from scratch, to build the idea yourself again.
Yeah.
And that's when you've learned. That's really when you've learned.
Right. So they're essentially just mistaking recollection for recognition.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yes, I can recognize this maths problem because I've
I
seen
can
it performed by the
recognize the
teacher,
flow. It all makes
but
sense.
I'm not able to. Right.
I'm not able to recall it myself.
So touching
So
on Daoism quickly, if you don't mind.
yeah,
Your latest video incorporated it. I wouldn't say it was centered around Daoism, but it touched
yeah, there
upon
is.
it.
Yeah,
And I think I left a comment on your video asking if you're a secular Daoist. What do you think of that?
secular day was.
Yeah, so
I don't.
you don't agree with the religious aspect of it, but rather the
hmm,
philosophical side. I guess that's how I would characterize the term secular Daoist.
I don't think I would characterize myself as a Daoist.
Okay.
I think it was Descartes as well, one of the existential philosophers who also, like me, admired Daoism just for its duality. It's a recognition of the duality of life,
Right.
and my main appreciation of it was the discarding of the idea that meaning had to come from some objective being outside of the universe, and it helped me realize that in this mortal life there's meaning within life itself, and there doesn't have to
Hmm.
be some sort of God giving your life meaning. You don't need to be eternal. You don't need to have all these box ticks box ticked for your life to have an inherent meaning. And what the Daoists try and get across is that there's a flow of life, and you're just a part of it, and there's meaning within that itself.
Okay. Yeah,
And
we'll
that's
obviously
that's that's
explore
what I
these.
appreciated about it. Very
Yeah.
existential idea.
Okay.
It got deep there really quick.
Yeah. No, we'll obviously explore these topics in the future,
Yeah, we'll explore it more
placing my
deeply, I'm
emphasis
sure.
on this. But now that you describe it, it sounds like there's some similarity between Daoism and pantheism. And obviously, I think we both have fairly rudimentary understandings of pantheism. But I think,
Wait, pantheism is the belief that what's it that God is the universe itself, something like that. God is
yeah,
nature.
yes,
Is it
God is
some
nature. I believe it's something like that.
yeah, where God's
Yeah,
not separate from the world. He's not out here and the world's here. He is
yes,
intertwined,
the fabric of
kind of
reality.
like the Force in Star Wars. That's kind of the concept that they try and play on in
Yeah,
Star Wars. That it's
didn't
built
think I'd be
within.
discussing Star Wars.
But that's the Deo. You know the Deo in Daoism. That's the
Yeah,
idea that the
okay,
Deo is within life, and you are part of that flow of life. I
right,
don't know. I don't know. I don't believe in that religious concept, but I believe that life on its own can have meaning. That's what I appreciated about
right.
it.
And but is this still an objective framing of meaning and purpose, or is it
I
still
don't
somewhat
I don't
subjective?
think it is because I mean, it has to be subjective. Um,
Okay, I suppose. But yeah, I guess that isn't the main focus of
we we
this
can
episode.
we, we can actually have a dedicated episode to that
Hmm.
to talk about these existential philosophies. That'll be a good one.
Yeah.
But for me, the main goal with all of this, like I've told you before, is to be better. That's self improvement. That's why I love the idea that this podcast can actually help with my speech. It can help communication skills,
Yeah.
all these aspects. It will help with learning, um,
Yeah.
recollection, as we've said. That for me is my number one driver. That is the what's the
Well, it's the overarching factor behind
what's
why
the
you
what's the main part of the soul?
the core.
No man
Is that
the
what you're trying to Okay.
What's the word now for this?
I don't know what you're trying to get at.
The powerhouse of the soul. What's it?
Mitochondria.
Yeah, the mitochondria of my
Uh,
of my motivation is
okay.
self improvement. Did I
Right.
use that right? Yeah, I used
I guess so.
it.
Yeah. But actually, it provides a nice segue into self-improvement if you want to talk about that and your journey.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at now.
Mm.
The learning, the all this learning, my passions in psychology, philosophy, it's the one to be better, and I think to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
That's usually a lot of people's goals for people who are aiming up, like yourself. It's like to make the world better, right? But for me to do that, step one is to improve yourself first.
Mm.
You'll make the lives of your family better, your friends better, your community better. Your life will be better. There's nothing bad that can come from improving yourself first,
Yeah.
and that's why it's my number one driver. And I think if I can improve myself enough, it will eventually overflow to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And you share your wisdom, things like that.
But it's
Um,
never ending, right? There's no
never
finish
ending,
line.
never ending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what what sparked the self improvement for me was I was always interested in religion, and I grew up in a Christian household like yourself, and then I became atheist, which kind of rocked my world. I made a whole nice video on it called "Meaning Beyond Faith." That's my latest video. If you want to
Yeah.
check that out,
Check it out,
um,
guys. Subscribe, like the video, comment.
subscribe, like, notification bell, share with your friends. Cheeky plug.
Yeah. Uh-uh.
Okay. Yeah. So it left me quite nihilistic because where do you go from there, right? Like you grow up thinking that this religion is it,
Yeah.
and it kind of breaks your fabric of reality. And the reason I'll mention Jordan Peterson's name so much is because he's the one who actually got me out of that cycle, and he almost taught me. He was like a father that I never had. That there is meaning you can find in life, and you don't have to be nihilistic. And that sparked.
Yeah.
That was 2022. I'll never forget that year because that sparked my journey on self improvement. And
Yeah.
that's holistic self improvement, health, mental health, physical um, learning. And when you fix yourself first, you will make the world a better place. I can
Yeah.
guarantee that. And
Yeah. I
people
think
people learn from you as well. You don't even have to speak to
yes.
them. People pick up on your drive, and it lifts them up as well. If your family's in a dark spot, it just takes one person to bring them out.
Right. Leading through actions, being
Yeah.
an example. Yeah.
Mm.
Now that you touched on nihilism and atheism briefly, I think there is a general misconception, especially prevalent amongst apologists of various religions, that atheism necessarily leads to nihilism.
In
And I
my case,
think,
it did initially.
yes, okay. But I mean, one
Yeah.
example doesn't prove every.
Yes. Yes.
Um, I think an easy refutation of this claim is that there are atheists who are not nihilists.
Like us right
Uh,
now.
yeah, like us. I don't know
Yeah.
if that's an airtight argument, but it certainly, at
It's
least at
a
face value,
valid
seems to.
argument. Yeah.
Mm, well, yeah. We can delve into logic at some stage as well,
Mm.
validity, coherence, because
We
those
should
words are
we
very
should make a
specific.
good list on topics we wanna delve into.
Yes,
Mm.
certainly. This is a nice introduction, yeah.
Do you want to end it there? 45 minutes.
Yeah, we could end it there. Or
Uh, that was a good start. I think we can do this once a week.
yeah,
whenever you're free, it doesn't even have to be long.
Yeah, what's
It
today,
can
Thursday?
be Thursday. We can, if you're busy in your studies, if I'm busy in my studies, we find 20 minutes. We literally hop on stream, we talk, we get off, we go back to our
Yeah,
lives. It
yeah,
doesn't have to be perfect.
yeah,
You know.
yeah.
Episode 1, the first step, self improvement on
Yeah.
the Transcend Yourself
Cool.
podcast. All right. Thank you guys. If you
Happy
stuck
days.
along all the way to the end, we will be bringing, as we've said, weekly podcasts if we can. We will be busy with studies, but we will try and find time for this, of course. All right.
Yeah,
Thanks for watching.
cool. Awesome. Great start.